Hi, it's Danny from Podchaser Stories with another video on a quick tip to help you grow your podcast. Last time around, we looked at Podkite, which allows you to create smart links to promote your podcast. And this week, I want to look at a similar tool called My Podcast Reviews. My Podcast Reviews is created by Daniel J. Lewis, who's the host of the Audacity to Podcast and a lot of other shows. He's an award-winning podcaster, and he built My Podcast Reviews, as it mentions here, so he doesn't have to manually check the podcast reviews. Just a quick disclaimer, Daniel's actually an advisor to Captivate FM, which is where I actually work as well. And Captivate's it's a growth-oriented podcast host that has a bunch of features to help podcasters like you grow your podcast and grow your listeners. And we're always looking at ways to include, new features and new tools similar to Smart Links, which is why we created our own, a single subscription link where you can share your podcast to your listeners and it allows them to choose the apps they can listen on. But what I'm using at the moment for reviews is My Podcast Reviews, which I'm really enjoying. I just signed up recently and I'm going through some of the features, and it's a really quick, useful way to gather all your podcast reviews in one place, not just from the country where you're based with your podcast, but globally as well. And it gathers the reviews from Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podchaser, and Castos. And so once you log into the site, it's really easy for you to track your reviews and add new podcasts. And when you're logged in, if you've got a podcast that you're already tracking, it'll ask you here, view my podcasts. If you don't, you can start to add new shows. So I've created one already for My Podcast Stories podcast. So let's have a look at that one. And that just gives you, my podcast here. So it shows me right away, Podcast Stories. I currently have 9 reviews. So if I want to look at the reviews, I would click on that and it just shows me where they're about. So it's got some tabs here that we'll go through. So it shows you ratings and reviews. And another good thing about My Podcast Reviews is it doesn't just ping in the reviews for your show. It also collates ratings. So if someone's on Podchaser, for example, and they don't want to leave an actual review, but maybe a 4 or 5 star rating for you, it'll collate them in here as well as your actual reviews. So it shows you that I've currently got 9 ratings for the show, 9 reviews, in 3 platforms in 3 countries. And you can scroll down and it shows you where the reviews have come from, what they're saying, and who's posted them. So for example, this one came from Rock, one of the co-founders of Squadcast, another great tool for podcasters that enhances remote recording. And Rock's in the United States and he left it on Apple Podcasts. And then you go down, you've got Mark from Captivate. He left a review on Podchaser. And then you've got, let's go down a little bit more. You got Podchaser, Apple Podcasts, you got Stitcher up here from Steve Connolly. So it's a good way of bringing all your reviews together, because if I'm in Canada and I want to look at what reviews I've got on Apple Podcasts, I can only see reviews that have been left by people that listen to my show in Canada. I can't see people that left a review in the UK or Germany or America, etc. So My Podcast Reviews brings this all together under one simple, dashboard. And what you can also do, which is a really neat, quick feature, if you want to highlight the reviews that you've got, you can. It's a good practice to thank the person that left a review, but it's also really good for social proof and shows people that your podcast is worth listening to. So what you can do is you can see this little share button up here. If I wanted to share Lee Lasseter's review about great behind the scenes look, what I could do is hit the share button, and that opens up a nice little screen like this that's got a little snippet, a little nice, creative diagram there, if you like, that shows the title of the review, the stars, who left it, what was said, and where it was done. And I can now share that on Twitter or upload it to my Facebook profile or page if you want to do that. And it also makes it really easy for others to now subscribe, rate, and review for your show on these apps here. So Apple Podcasts, you get Stitcher, you've got Podchaser, and you've got Castbox. So it's a really nice way and a simple way to encourage even more reviews from the ones that you've already got. So that's a really cool feature. What you've also got, if you go up, you can look at integrations. So you could leave a reviews RSS feed and you could connect that to something like Zapier, for example, or If This Then That, and feed out your reviews and hook them up to some automated apps if you want to share it or hook it to a newsletter or something. So there's some integrations there you can do without having to be in a dashboard, etc. What's really cool is a new feature that Daniel's just released called Love the Podcast, which is part of my podcast reviews. Love the Podcast, as you click over it, it's, as it says, it's share your Love the Podcast link to make it easier for your audience to rate and review your podcast. So what this does, it creates a smart link for you. Now this is the default one here, but you can tailor that and adjust it and make it a custom URL, that you can share. So I've tied it in, just made it lovethepodcast.com, Podchaser stories. And what's really neat about this is it actually only displays the apps that you can review on based on the operating system that you're using. So for example, if you're using Windows and macOS 10.14 and earlier, you can only open up iTunes. If you've got iOS and macOS 10.15 and later, you can do Apple Podcasts. Podchaser will work for all devices. Stitcher will work for Windows, macOS and Linux. Castos for all devices, and there's more apps coming soon, depending on which one, integrate ratings and reviews, etc. And what happens there is if I click to copy that and then just ping on over to a new browser and drop that in, you can see that it opens up this little landing page. So this will now be, and it's a completely mobile responsive page, so no matter if you're on a desktop or your mobile, etc., this will adjust accordingly and still look really good. So you can see that you've got the logo here, love the podcast, Podchaser stories, please rate and review. So it's giving you almost like a call to action as someone that clicks on the link to rate it and review on Apple Podcasts or Podchaser, Stitcher or Castbox. So you would just basically click these links and it would take you over to the relevant platform. And as long as you're logged into, say, Apple Podcasts or your Podchaser account, you can create and leave a review for this particular show. If you don't have an account at Podchaser, it's really easy to sign up for one. And it's a really cool platform, Podchaser. It's almost like the IMDb of podcasting, if you like. And we have it integrated at Captivate, so it's a really neat feature to have there. So again, it's just making it really simple for your listeners and your users to, support your podcast and to really show the love for it and grow extra listeners by, recommending your podcast as well. A neat little feature within the dashboard itself. It's nothing to do with the links or the reviews or anything, but it's a nice little feature that Daniel's included for users of my podcast reviews is industry stats. So if you click onto the link of industry stats, what that will do is open up some stats regarding the state of the podcasting industry. So you've got insights from Apple Podcasts updated nightly, courtesy of my podcast reviews. And you can also request a custom podcast industry data report if you're an agency or someone that's helping clients with podcasting. But basically, it can show you how many podcasts there are currently, how many episodes are in these podcasts, when they're added, when they're removed, etc. Previous day, monthly additions, removals, detailed activity. So you've got active versus inactive podcasts and how many episodes on average are available in feeds, etc. Just a whole lot of really cool information that, he didn't need to throw this in, but he's added that as part of the dashboard experience. So again, it's really cool, and it's just like a really nice way of doing things. So that's like my podcast reviews. And like I say, you can actually add one really easily. So if you go to add podcast, all you need to do is just type in the name of the podcast. So I'm going to look at this one, which is my the podcast I do with my wife that we'll be relaunching in the next few weeks. So mental health and me, and do a search. And you can see it pops up the ones that are relevant to that search term. But here's this one here. That's the podcast there. So I'm just going to click on it and click add. And that starts the process of adding it in. Now, do I want to add a podcast? You can do it by author, etc. But that's good. So now I can view all my products and have a look at that. And Mental Health and Me's got one review. And that's actually the one I left my wife when she was doing it as a solo podcast before I became involved. Not to say that it wasn't as good then, just in case my wife's watching this video. But it's a really cool way of even getting up-to-date stats and information on brand new podcasts. And again, you can love the podcast, and this is how easy it is to type in. So I want to make a custom health. So if I type in mental health podcast, then save that. And that's it, saved. So now I can copy it. I can hop over to a window again, a little browser tab. And again, you've got it right there and it's ready to go. And that was in the space of, 10, 20 seconds tops from start to finish. So as I say, it's like a really, really cool account, a really cool service. Pricing wise, I'm just going to hit over to logging out. So pricing wise, it's pretty good as well. For small reports, you can pay $50 per year, and it's 2 podcasts and all the features that you get in the medium and large accounts. The main difference is the amount of podcasts that you're tracking. So $150 per year for 7 podcasts and $250 per year for 15 podcasts. And you get a whole bunch of great features. CSV exports, review filtering, review sorting, integrations, etc. And as I showed in the dashboard area, there's a lot more coming. If you want to pay monthly, it's $5 per month. So it basically, you're saving $10 annually if you pay for the annual one, and you'll save X amount on the medium and large plans. If you pay annually versus monthly, you get like a 17% discount. Anyway, guys, this is, like I say, it's a really neat feature, really nice to use, and make it simple to encourage reviews for your podcast and make it easy for your listeners to review your show. It's at mypodcastreviews.com. And I'll leave the links for that down in the notes below the video. Check it out. You've got a free trial for 14 days. And, see what you think and let me know. Anyway, this has been Danny from Podcaster Stories. Until the next video, stay safe and we'll speak soon.